I've always thought that life is a bit like a song. It starts with a gentle hum, then before you know it, it's a full-blown symphony. The only problem is not every symphony sounds beautiful, especially when it's composed of heartache, struggle, and sacrifice. My name is Marissa Jenkins. I'm 50 years old, a single mother, and a widow. That's the part of my life most people don't know, because, well, I don't talk about it much. I lost my husband, Thomas, 5 years ago to a heart attack, leaving me to raise our 2 kids on my own. But I didn't just lose him, I lost everything that came with him. The financial security, the stability, everything. I live in a small house in a neighborhood in Atlanta where the paint is peeling and the streets are lined with old cars that haven't moved in years. Not that it bothers me. It's home. It's all I can afford. I've always made the best of things. But sometimes, when I lay down at night after another grueling shift at the diner, I think about what I've lost and wonder if there's more to life than just surviving. My kids, Tasha and Devin, are my world. Tasha is 16. She's always been the strong one, the one who never backs down, even when life gives her a reason to. She's beautiful, smart, and full of fire. I see so much of myself in her, but there's a sadness in her eyes that I can't ignore. She's had to grow up too fast. She has a mother who's always too tired to be the mom she wants to be. Devin, my 13-year-old son, is different. He's quiet, thoughtful, and athletic. He has this natural talent for football that I know could take him far if he had the right guidance. But right now, the only thing I can offer him is my love and a roof over his head. Sometimes, I wonder if he knows how much I want more for him, more than this life of struggle. The bills don't stop coming. Every month feels like a fight to make ends meet, but somehow we always make it through. I work double shifts at the diner downtown, long hours, aching feet, and too many people who don't notice me. But at least I get to provide for my children. Still, some days it feels like I'm drowning. And when I look at Tasha, I can see the weight of the world on her shoulders. She shouldn't be having to help me hold this family together. She shouldn't have to worry about paying the bills or whether or not we can afford to buy groceries for the week. But that's the reality I've had to live with, and it's been eating away at me for too long. It was one of those nights when I'd just gotten home after another grueling shift at the diner. My feet felt like they were going to fall off, and my mind was foggy with exhaustion. I sat down at the kitchen table, the pile of overdue bills staring at me the same way they always did. Tasha walked into the room and stood there for a moment before speaking. "Mom, can we talk?" I looked up at her, her face troubled, her eyes a little too grown-up for a 16-year-old. "Of course, honey, what's on your mind?" She hesitated before answering. "It's just I don't know how much longer we can keep doing this. You're always working, and I'm trying, but I can't do everything. I'm just tired." The words hit me harder than I expected. I knew she was struggling, but hearing it out loud made it all the more real. My heart sank. I'd tried so hard to shield her from this, to give her a sense of normalcy despite the chaos, but there was only so much I could do. "I know, baby, I know," I said softly, forcing a smile I didn't quite feel. "We'll get through it, we always do." But Tasha's face didn't soften. She wasn't convinced, and neither was I. I wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, but I couldn't make that promise. Not when I didn't know if I could keep it myself. That night, as I sat in the quiet of the house, I thought about what she said. I thought about the days when I could only offer my kids love and not the future I had always imagined for them. I wanted more for them, much more. But no matter how much I worked, no matter how hard I tried, I just couldn't catch up. Then, on one of those nights when I felt like the world was pushing me further and further down, something unexpected happened. I met Richard Hayes. It was just after closing at the diner. I'd wiped down the last of the tables and was preparing to head out when he walked in. He was an older man, maybe in his mid-60s, dressed in a sharp suit that seemed out of place in a diner like ours. The soft hum of the diner felt quieter with him in it, and for a moment I wondered if he was lost. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice deep and rich. "Could I get a coffee to go?" I nodded, my mind still reeling from the conversation with Tasha. As I poured his coffee, he smiled at me, a kind of knowing smile that made me feel like he saw right through me. "Thank you," he said, his voice warm. "You know, I can tell you work hard. Not many people would do what you're doing, and I admire that." It wasn't the kind of thing people usually said to me. In fact, I rarely got compliments that weren't about my job, but there was something different about the way he said it. He seemed genuine in a way that caught me off guard. "Thank you," I replied, not sure what else to say. "It's just what I have to do." "I know," he said. "But still, you do it with grace." I couldn't help but wonder why he was talking to me like this. I had Lee. "I'm Richard Hayes." He introduced himself, extending his hand. I shook it. "Marissa Jenkins." "Well, Marissa, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I can tell you're doing your best, and if you ever need help with anything, don't hesitate to reach out." I blinked, unsure of what he meant. Help? A stranger offering help? I hadn't heard that in years. "I'm serious," he continued, sensing my hesitation. "I have resources, and I believe in giving back. You're a hard-working woman. You deserve more than just surviving." His words lingered in the air long after he'd left, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was about to change. The diner had emptied out by the time I locked the door behind the last customer, the soft click of the lock echoing in the quiet. The night had been long, longer than usual, it seemed. My feet felt like they were made of lead, every step a battle against the exhaustion threatening to swallow me whole. I just wanted to collapse into bed, but my mind was still buzzing from the conversation with Tasha earlier, the worries I couldn't shake off. The weight of it all was too much, and yet it never seemed to lighten. I grabbed my coat and slung it over my shoulder, then turned to grab my purse when I heard a tap on the glass door. My heart skipped a beat, and for a second I thought I was imagining it. But there he was, Richard Hayes, standing just outside the diner, his breath visible in the cold night air. What was he doing here? I walked over, unsure of what to expect. When I opened the door, Richard smiled, a look of genuine kindness in his eyes. "I didn't mean to catch you after hours, Marissa, but I was hoping we could talk." I blinked, surprised. "Talk? It's late, Richard. I'm ready to go home." He nodded, his smile unwavering. "I understand, but this won't take long. I wanted to follow up on what we talked about earlier. If you have a moment?" I hesitated. I was so tired, so overwhelmed with the pressures of the day. But something about the sincerity in his voice made me pause. I stepped aside to let him in. As soon as he entered, Richard walked to the counter and sat down, unbuttoning his coat with a relaxed ease that seemed out of place in my tired world. I followed, sitting down across from him, my hands instinctively folding in my lap. I wasn't sure what to make of him, but there was something about the way he looked at me, like he could see through the exhaustion and the walls I had carefully built up over the years. "I've been thinking about your situation, Marissa," Richard began, his voice soft but firm. "About how you're balancing everything on your own. Raising 2 kids, working double shifts, it's a lot." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. He was right. I had been carrying this weight for years now, and sometimes I didn't know how much longer I could hold it up. "I've been in your shoes, in a way," he continued. "I know what it's like to struggle. I've made my share of mistakes, but what I've learned is that sometimes it's okay to let others help." I felt a tightness in my chest. I had spent so many years doing everything by myself, never letting anyone get too close, too involved. Trust wasn't something I gave easily. Not after Thomas. Not after all the things I had to do alone. "You don't need to do this on your own," Richard added, his voice lowering. "I can help. I have the resources to make things easier for you." I stared at him, unable to speak for a moment. What was he offering me, really? Was it just a generous gesture, or was there something more behind it? I know you might not be comfortable with this, and I understand, he said, leaning forward slightly. But I want to help you and your children. I want to make sure Tasha gets the opportunities she deserves. And Devin, he's got a gift, Marissa. That boy could go far if he had the right guidance. I swallowed hard. He didn't know Devin the way I did. He didn't know how shy and unsure of himself my son could be, how scared he was of failing. But Richard was right about one thing: Devin had a gift. I had always known that deep down, even if I didn't know how to help him nurture it. And what do you want in return? I asked, my voice thick with skepticism. I couldn't help it. There had to be a catch, right? Richard's smile softened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of something that looked like genuine concern. Nothing, Marissa. No strings attached. I just want to help. If you're willing to accept it, of course. I've been successful in my life, and I've come to realize that helping others is what makes it all worthwhile. I looked at him, my mind racing. This wasn't just some random offer, it was a chance. A chance to give my children a future that didn't feel so uncertain. A chance to finally catch my breath. But then came the flood of doubts. Could I really trust him? Could I trust anyone again after all these years of doing everything myself? The silence between us stretched, and I could see the patience in Richard's eyes. He wasn't rushing me, he was letting me think. Why me? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Why do you want to help us? Richard sat back in his chair, the lines of his face softening. It's not just about helping you, Marissa. It's about helping your kids. I see a lot of myself in Devin. When I was his age, I didn't have anyone to push me, to believe in me the way I needed. And Tasha, she's a bright girl. She's got ambition, but sometimes ambition isn't enough without the right support. You're a good mother. You're doing everything you can, but it's clear that you need help. I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that I could do this myself, that I had always done it myself, but I didn't. Instead, I sat there, silently contemplating his words. There was truth in them, painful as it was to admit. You don't have to decide right now, Richard said, sensing my internal struggle. But I want you to know that the offer is there. I can make things easier for you, for all of you, but only if you're willing to accept it. I nodded slowly, feeling a tightness in my chest. It was terrifying, this idea of accepting help from someone I barely knew. But as I sat there, looking into Richard's eyes, I couldn't help but feel that maybe this was the break I had been waiting for. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment that could change everything for my family. I'll think about it, I said finally, my voice shaky but resolute. Richard smiled, as if he had expected that answer. Take all the time you need, Marissa, but when you're ready, I'll be here. As I walked him to the door, I couldn't help but feel like something had shifted. The air felt heavier somehow, charged with the weight of possibilities. Richard's offer was a lifeline, but accepting it would mean letting go of the only thing I had clung to for so long, my independence. I stepped out into the cold night, the world outside buzzing with the usual hum of traffic and distant voices. But for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel quite so alone. Maybe it was just the thought of the future, of what might be possible if I accepted Richard's help. Or maybe it was the hope that, after all these years of struggling, I might finally be able to give my children something better. But I didn't know yet if I was ready. I didn't know if I could trust him. And the hardest part was that, for the first time, I wasn't sure if I could trust myself to make the right choice. It had been 3 days since Richard Hayes had walked into my life and made his offer. 3 days of sleepless nights, pacing back and forth, questioning every part of my reality. It's funny how a simple gesture can unravel the very fabric of your life. All it takes is one person, one moment, to change the direction of everything. And here I was, teetering on the edge of a decision that could either lift me out of the depths of survival or bury me deeper in doubt. I sat at the kitchen table, my hands wrapped around a cup of lukewarm coffee, staring at the same stack of bills that had been haunting me for weeks. They were never-ending, suffocating. I hadn't even opened the new ones that arrived that morning. What was the point? Devin was still in bed, probably lost in a world of his own, the world where football practice and video games were the most pressing matters. He didn't know the half of it. How could he? He was just a kid, and I wished more than anything that I could protect him from the burdens of adulthood. He didn't need to worry about where his next meal would come from or whether the electricity would stay on. Tasha had gone to school early, but she hadn't spoken much to me the last few days. She had that look on her face again, the one that made me wonder if she was starting to give up on me. She'd always been the strong one, the one who tried to carry everyone else's weight, but I could see the cracks in her armor now. She was tired, so tired, and I couldn't blame her. The knock on the door startled me, snapping me out of my thoughts. I stood up, my legs a little shaky from the lack of sleep, and walked slowly to the door. When I opened it, there stood Richard, looking as calm and collected as ever. A little too calm, perhaps, like he already knew what I was going to say. "Marissa," he greeted me, his smile warm but understanding. I hope I'm not interrupting. I didn't know if I should invite him in. I wasn't ready for this, not yet, but I also didn't want to seem rude, so I stepped aside and let him in. "I've been thinking about what you said," I began, my voice hesitant. "About your offer, and, well, I don't know what to do with it." Richard nodded as if he had expected nothing less. "It's a big decision, Marissa. I understand that. I want you to take your time. But I also want you to understand that opportunities like this don't come around every day. Your family doesn't have to struggle anymore. Not if you don't want to." He looked around the kitchen, taking in the worn-out chairs and the peeling wallpaper. For a moment, I saw something in his eyes, something like pity. It wasn't the first time someone had looked at me like that, but Richard wasn't like the others. He wasn't offering a hand out of charity, he was offering something different. Something I wasn't sure I deserved. "I know it's hard to trust, especially when you've been doing everything on your own for so long," Richard said, his voice softer now. "But you don't have to keep carrying this burden by yourself. There's help available. All you have to do is accept it." I felt the weight of his words sink deep into my chest. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe that someone, anyone, could make all of this go away. But trust wasn't something I could give away so easily. Not anymore. "I don't know if I can, Richard," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've been doing it alone for so long. It's hard to imagine anything else." Richard didn't push. He simply nodded and gave me the space to breathe. "I get that. But sometimes asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong. It means you're choosing to fight for something better, for you and your kids." His words were heavy, and I could feel them settling into the pit of my stomach, gnawing at the edges of my resolve. He was right. I knew he was. But accepting help from him, no matter how well-meaning it was, meant opening up to a world I wasn't sure I was ready to face. "What's the catch?" I blurted out before I could stop myself. "There has to be a catch, right? You don't just offer help without wanting something in return." Richard's eyes softened, and he leaned forward slightly. "There's no catch, Marissa. The only thing I'm asking is that you let me help. No strings attached. I don't want anything from you but the opportunity to make things easier for you, for your family." I stared at him for a long moment, my mind spinning. Everything in me screamed to say no, to close the door, to walk away from this strange offer. But then I thought about Tasha, about how hard she was working just to keep us afloat. And I thought about Devin, about the life he could have if he just had a little push, a little encouragement. "I'm not sure what I'd even ask for," I said quietly, my voice shaky. "I mean, what do I even need? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with all of this." Richard's smile softened again, and he stood up, walking over to the counter and picking up one of the overdue bills I'd been avoiding. "You don't have to know right now, but this," he gestured to the bills in his hand, "this doesn't have to be your reality, not anymore." I looked at him, then at the bills. For the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to imagine a different kind of future. A future where I didn't have to constantly worry about how to keep the lights on, how to scrape together enough for food, how to explain to my kids that things would be okay when I didn't even know how to make them okay myself. I felt something inside of me crack, just a little. Something that had been hardened by years of struggle, by years of pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. Something that told me that maybe, just maybe, it was okay to let go of the reins for once. "I'll think about it," I said again, but this time, it didn't feel like a rejection. It felt like an opening, a crack in the wall I'd built around myself. Richard nodded and turned toward the door. "That's all I'm asking. Take your time, Marissa, but when you're ready, I'll be here." As I closed the door behind him, I leaned against it for a moment, my breath coming in slow, steadying gasps. I wasn't ready to make a decision yet. But for the first time in a long while, I felt the faintest glimmer of hope. A hope that maybe, just maybe, I could give my kids something better. A chance at a life where they didn't have to carry the weight of everything alone, just like I had. But could I take that first step? I didn't know yet, but I would find out soon enough. The days following Richard's visit passed in a blur of uncertainty. Every time I looked at Tasha, her eyes full of questions I didn't have the answers to, I felt that gnawing weight in my chest. I knew something had to change, but change came with risks, risks that threatened to unravel everything I had built, everything I had fought for. I couldn't shake the image of Richard's face, his calm eyes, his unwavering confidence in his offer. It was the first time someone had looked at me like that, not with pity, but with respect. He saw something in me that I wasn't sure I even saw in myself anymore. I had spent my whole life protecting my children from the harsh realities of our world, from the pain of losing their father, from the daily grind of scraping by. I didn't want them to ever feel the weight of the world on their shoulders the way I had. But now, I was faced with a choice: accept Richard's offer of help, and in doing so, risk losing control over my own life and my family's future, or keep going the way I always had on my own. The hardest part of the decision wasn't whether or not I could trust Richard. It was whether I could trust myself. Could I let go of the reins, even just a little? Could I accept that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to do it all alone? I didn't have the answers, not yet, but the pressure was mounting. Every time I looked at the bills, my chest tightened and my thoughts spiraled. I'd spent hours going over the numbers, trying to find a way to stretch what little money I had, trying to figure out how to make the pieces fit. But the math didn't add up. It never did. The bills kept coming and I was drowning in them. Tasha and Devin could see it too, I could tell. They were starting to notice how thin I was stretched, how my patience was wearing thin, how my smiles were becoming fewer and farther between. Tasha was getting quieter. Devin was getting more withdrawn. I didn't want them to see me like this, but I wasn't sure how to hide it anymore. It was the third night after Richard's offer when I found myself sitting in the kitchen, staring at the phone in my hand. I had picked it up and set it down at least 5 times, unsure of what to say if I called him. But the thought of continuing on the same path was suffocating me. I couldn't keep doing this to my kids. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I took a deep breath and dialed his number. It rang twice before he picked up. "Marissa," Richard's voice came through the line, warm and steady. "I was wondering when you'd call." His words weren't smug like I'd imagined. He wasn't waiting for some sort of confirmation or a victory. He just sounded patient, like he knew this wasn't an easy decision. "I've been thinking," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "about your offer, and I think I'm ready." There was a pause on the other end, just long enough for me to wonder if I had made a mistake. "Are you sure?" he asked, and I could hear the sincerity in his voice. "You don't have to make this decision if you're not ready." "I'm ready," I said more firmly this time. I just need help. I've been trying so hard, Richard, but I can't do it on my own anymore. The words felt like a release, like a burden I had been carrying for too long was finally being lifted off my shoulders. But at the same time, I felt a pang of guilt. I had spent my entire life telling myself that I was strong enough, that I didn't need anyone. And now, here I was asking for help, accepting it. Okay then, Richard replied, his voice softer now. We'll take it slow. We'll figure out what you need first, and we'll go from there. There's no rush. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. Thank you, I whispered. I don't know what else to say except that. I just want what's best for my kids. I understand. And I promise you, Marissa, I'm here to help you get there. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Richard wasted no time in getting started. He arranged for a financial consultant to meet with me to go over my budget and the overwhelming stack of bills that had been haunting me. I felt like an imposter, sitting across from the woman who was helping me with the numbers, as if I wasn't supposed to be there, as if I didn't deserve any of this. But when the consultant, Karen, started to explain the steps we could take to eliminate the debt, to make sure my kids had a better future, something inside me began to shift. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was beginning to see a way out, a path forward. And for the first time in a long time, the future didn't seem so dark. Tasha wasn't thrilled at first, not with Richard's involvement, not with the changes happening so suddenly. She couldn't understand why I had accepted his help. But Devin was different. He hadn't said much about it, but I could see the way his eyes lit up when we talked about the possibilities. Football camps, a chance to develop his talent, a chance to finally step out of the shadow of his father's death. It wasn't perfect. Nothing ever is. Tasha was still pulling away, still skeptical. I knew she was trying to protect me, trying to make sense of everything. But I also knew that part of her was relieved. Part of her wanted to believe in this new chance, even if she didn't say it aloud. Richard had been true to his word. He wasn't asking for anything in return, at least not right away. He set up a college fund for Tasha. He made sure Devin had the right training for his football scholarship. He even took the time to sit down with both of them, explaining what he was doing and why. He made it clear that this wasn't charity, it was an investment in their futures. And slowly, they began to trust him, if not fully, then at least enough to see him as something other than an outsider. But the more I watched Richard interact with my kids, the more I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something I didn't know. Something that wasn't quite right. I had accepted his help, but had I accepted him too quickly? Was I letting someone else come in and take over my life without understanding the full picture? And more importantly, what did all of this mean for me? For my own independence. One evening, after everything had calmed down for the night, I sat alone in the kitchen, staring out the window into the dark. The streetlights cast long shadows across the empty road. It was quiet, peaceful even, but the peace didn't last long. The doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Richard standing there again. But this time, his smile didn't reach his eyes. "I need to talk to you," he said, his tone different from the easygoing way he usually spoke. Something was wrong. The moment I opened the door, I could feel the tension in the air. Richard stood there, his usual calm demeanor replaced with something more serious, something almost urgent in his eyes. It sent a chill down my spine, though I couldn't place why. The man who had been so kind, so patient, who had promised to help, was now standing in front of me with a look I hadn't seen before. "Richard," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, despite the knot forming in my stomach. "Is everything okay?" He didn't respond right away. Instead, he looked past me into the house, his gaze momentarily shifting to the dim light of the kitchen. Then he met my eyes again. "I need to talk to you. It's about the kids," he said, his voice low, almost too serious for a casual visit. I stepped back, gesturing for him to come in. "What's going on?" Richard entered, his movements more deliberate than I was used to. He seemed to be carrying something heavy, some weight he hadn't shared before. I shut the door behind him and led him to the kitchen table where I had been sitting not long ago, lost in thought. The weight of his presence in the room made me feel uneasy, like the walls were closing in a little. "Please, sit down," I said, offering him the chair across from mine. He took it without a word, his eyes never leaving mine. I sat down slowly, my mind racing, trying to make sense of whatever was going on. What's happened? Has something happened with Devin, Tasha? Richard exhaled slowly, and for the first time I saw a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "It's not about them, not directly. It's about how we're moving forward, Marissa. I need you to understand something. I don't think you do yet." The air in the room felt thicker now, like he was building up to something I didn't want to hear. My throat tightened. "What are you talking about?" Richard leaned forward slightly, his hands clasped together on the table in front of him. "This, what I've been doing for you and your kids, it's not just out of the kindness of my heart. There's a reason I'm involved in your life, Marissa, and it's not just about helping you get your financial situation sorted." I blinked, the sudden shift in tone knocking the wind out of me. "What do you mean? What do you want from me?" Richard's expression hardened, and I felt the shift in the room, a shift I couldn't ignore. "I want something real from you, Marissa," he said, his voice firm, almost cold. "I didn't offer my help just to watch you keep running away from the real issue. You and I both know that there's more here than just helping your family." I sat back, the words landing like a slap. My heart started pounding, the shock of what he was implying making my head spin. "What issue?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I've never asked for anything more than a little help. You promised me this was about the kids, about giving them a better life. You said there were no strings attached." Richard's gaze intensified, but his face remained unreadable. "I meant it when I said I wanted to help, Marissa, but I also need to be clear about something. You can't keep rejecting what's in front of you. You're making it harder than it needs to be." "Rejecting what?" My chest tightened, and I struggled to keep my composure. "Are you saying I've been ungrateful?" "Not ungrateful," he corrected, "but closed off. You're still trying to do everything on your own, even though I've offered to help. The reason I'm involved is because I see something in you, Marissa, something I believe in, but you're not ready to see it in yourself." His words sliced through me, each one sharper than the last. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. What could I say? How could I respond to the growing sense of unease that had settled deep in my bones? "I don't understand," I whispered, almost to myself. "Why are you doing this? Why are you pushing me like this? I don't know if I can trust you. I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore." Richard's eyes softened, a hint of frustration still lingering behind them. "I'm not trying to push you, Marissa, but you're making it harder than it needs to be. You want to protect your family, but you're not letting me help you in the way that I can. This isn't just about writing checks. It's about you trusting me enough to let me be part of this family, to let me support you the way you deserve." I stood up abruptly, feeling the heat rise in my cheeks. "I never asked for this kind of support, Richard. I never asked for you to come into my life and make decisions for me. I don't know what you're really after, but I don't think I want to find out." Richard followed my movement with his eyes but didn't stand. He didn't push. He just sat there, watching me, waiting for me to make the next move. His silence was deafening. "I'm not here to take anything from you," he said, his voice calmer now, but with an edge of something else I couldn't place. "I just want you to see that you're not alone anymore. But you need to stop pushing people away, Marissa. You need to let go of the walls you've built around yourself. They're going to crumble, whether you want them to or not." His words echoed in my mind, louder than my own thoughts. I could feel the weight of his gaze, the truth behind his words. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been holding on too tightly to the wrong things. Maybe, in my attempt to protect my family, I had forgotten how to let anyone else in. But at that moment, I couldn't let go. Not yet. Not until I knew what I was dealing with. "I can't do this right now," I said, my voice trembling. "I need space. I need time." Richard didn't push. He just nodded, standing up slowly. I'll give you that space, Marissa, but you can't keep running from this forever. As he walked toward the door, I stood there, frozen in place, my heart pounding in my chest. I didn't know if I was ready to face whatever was waiting for me on the other side of this decision. I didn't know if I could trust Richard, or if I was just another person who had fallen into his web of promises and hidden intentions. But one thing was clear. The moment I allowed him into my life, everything had changed. And now, I had to decide whether I could accept the change, or if I would continue to push everyone away, even the ones who were trying to help. The following days felt like I was caught in a storm, watching the wind whip everything around me but never being able to move. The conversation with Richard had left me shaken, but it was more than that. It was the crack in the foundation of everything I'd believed to be true about myself, the belief that I could do it all, that I didn't need anyone else, and certainly not the help of someone like Richard. Every corner of the house seemed to remind me of my failures: the overflowing laundry basket, the half-filled refrigerator, the bills still piled up on the kitchen counter, taunting me with their permanence. It felt like everything was about to collapse, like everything was unraveling. I didn't know how to fix it, and for the first time in years, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I tried to talk to Tasha about it. I had to, really. She was old enough to sense something was wrong. But the distance between us had grown in the last few weeks, and I couldn't blame her for it. She had her own frustrations, her own quiet anger, and I was no longer the mother who could provide the answers. I had become the one who needed saving. "Mom, you've been acting weird lately," Tasha said one evening as we sat together on the couch. The TV was on, but neither of us were watching it. Her voice was tentative, like she wasn't sure if she should say what was on her mind. I turned to face her, my heart heavy. "I know. I'm sorry, Tasha. Things have been hard and I'm trying to figure it out. I don't want you to worry." "I'm not worried," she replied quickly, but I could hear the edge in her voice. "I just don't get it. You're acting like you can't do this anymore, like you're giving up on us. What happened to you, Mom? You've always been strong." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. You've always been strong. I had always been the pillar, the one who made sure everything was okay, even when it wasn't. I had never let them see the cracks, but now those cracks were too big to ignore. "I'm not giving up on you, Tasha," I said, my voice low, unsure. "I'm just trying to find a way to make things work. This isn't easy for me. I've always been the one to handle everything, but you don't have to anymore," she interrupted, her eyes fierce now. "Why are you letting Richard take over? Why are you acting like we can't make it on our own?" The tension in the room thickened. My daughter, the girl who had been my anchor, was angry, and I didn't blame her. I had promised her that I would always be strong, that we would always get through things together, and now I was starting to let others into the picture. People who didn't understand what it meant to fight for every single day. "I'm not letting him take over, Tasha," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. "He's just helping. He's offering support, something I didn't realize I needed." Tasha shook her head, her lips pressed tight. "You don't even trust him, Mom. You've always taught us not to trust people who offer too much. It's not like you to just accept help from someone without asking questions. I don't understand why you're doing this." "I'm doing it because we need it," I said, frustration creeping into my voice. "I can't keep pretending like everything is okay when it's not." Tasha didn't reply at first. She just sat there, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. The silence stretched, the weight of unspoken words filling the room. Finally, she spoke again, softer this time. "I just want you to be okay, Mom. I don't want you to lose yourself in this, whatever this is with Richard. I'm scared you'll forget about us. Forget about what really matters." I swallowed hard. Her words were cutting, but they were true. In trying to fix everything, in trying to give us all a better life, I had neglected the very thing that mattered most, the bond we shared, the trust between us. "I'm not going anywhere, Tasha," I said, my voice cracking. I promise you I'm still your mom, and I'm still going to fight for this family. But maybe I need to learn how to accept help along the way. And maybe I need to let others help us too. Tasha didn't say anything more. She just nodded slowly, as if she were trying to process everything, as if she wasn't sure whether she believed me or not. But I wasn't sure I believed myself either. The next day, Richard called again. He didn't just want to check in this time, he was more insistent. He wanted to talk about the next steps, about the plans he had for Tasha and Devin. It felt like he was taking over everything, like he had assumed control of my life without me fully understanding how or why. I had asked for his help, yes, but somewhere along the line, I had stopped feeling like I was in control. When I picked up the phone, Richard's voice was calm but direct. Marissa, we need to make a decision about Tasha's future. I've got a place lined up for her to tour this weekend. It's a college prep program, one of the best in the city. My stomach turned. I didn't agree to anything like that, Richard. I said, my voice more forceful than I intended. I appreciate what you're doing, but I haven't had a chance to talk to Tasha about this. She's not ready for that kind of pressure. Richard sighed. I could hear the frustration in his breath. I understand that you want to protect her, but she's talented, Marissa, and she's going to waste that talent if we don't help her now. This is an opportunity she can't pass up. I felt the heat rise in my face, the feeling of being cornered. I don't need you to tell me what my daughter can or can't do, Richard. I know what she's capable of. Then why not let her explore the opportunities? Richard pressed, his voice steady. Why hold her back? It was the way he said it that stung the most, as if he knew better, as if he had all the answers and I was just too blind to see them. I knew he was trying to help, but in that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was pushing me into a corner, that he was slowly taking over, eroding my sense of control. I need time to talk to her about this first, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll let you know when we're ready to move forward. Richard paused, and for a moment I thought he might push harder. But he didn't. Take all the time you need, Marissa. But you should know, I'm here to help whenever you're ready. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling. The weight of his words lingered, and I knew that I had reached a tipping point. I couldn't let Richard dictate my life, no matter how well-intentioned his help seemed. I needed to regain control over my family, over my choices. But how? As the days passed, I began to notice the cracks forming in the foundation of our family. Tasha's distance, Devin's growing silence, and then there was me, lost in the blur of decisions I wasn't ready to make. Richard's help had opened up doors, but had it also opened the gates to something darker, something I couldn't fully understand yet? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine. I needed to face the truth, no matter how painful it was. It had been a week since Richard's call, and the weight of his words still lingered in the air, suffocating me with every breath. The pressure to make decisions I wasn't ready to make, to let go of the control I'd fought so hard for, was starting to take its toll. My kids were noticing it too, Tasha's quiet rebellion, Devin's growing distance. They could see the shift in me, even if they didn't fully understand it. I hadn't told them about Richard's latest offer for Tasha, or the pressure he had placed on me to move forward. I didn't know how to explain it, how to justify it to them when I was struggling to justify it to myself. And so, I kept it to myself, the weight of that secret pressing down harder than the bills ever had. The quiet in the house had grown more oppressive. The walls seemed to be closing in on me with every passing day. The air felt thick with unsaid words, unasked questions. I couldn't keep pretending like I had all the answers. I couldn't keep faking strength when it was slipping through my fingers. It was one afternoon when Tasha came home from school early that I knew things couldn't go on like this. Her eyes were tired, her shoulders slumped with exhaustion I hadn't noticed before. There was a weariness in her expression that mirrored my own. "Mom," she said quietly, her voice shaky. "Can we talk?" I looked at her, and for the first time in days, I saw how deeply the cracks had spread. "Of course, honey, what's on your mind?" She hesitated, then walked toward the kitchen table, sitting down across from me. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, and I could see the way her fingers trembled slightly. She was holding something back, something she had been trying to keep from me. "I don't know how to say this," she began, her voice soft but with an edge of frustration. "But I don't think I can do this anymore." My heart sank. I had heard those words before, but never from her, not like this. "Do what, Tasha?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, afraid of what she might say. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a mix of pain and confusion. "Everything. Trying to keep everything together for you, for Devin. I don't know if I can keep pretending that I'm okay when I'm not, when I don't even know who I'm supposed to be anymore. I'm lost, Mom. I feel like I'm drowning." I felt my chest tighten. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. She was trying so hard, but the weight of it all had become too much. Just like me, she was carrying the burden of everything. And just like me, she didn't know how to let it go. "You don't have to pretend for me, Tasha," I said, my voice trembling with emotion. "I never wanted you to feel like you had to carry this weight. You're my daughter. You shouldn't have to do this alone." Tasha's eyes filled with tears, and she looked away, blinking rapidly as if trying to hold it all together. "But I am alone, Mom. You're always gone. You're always trying to make things better, but it's like you're losing yourself in all of this." The words cut deeper than I could have imagined. It was the truth. I had been losing myself, and in doing so, I had been losing her too. I hadn't noticed how far she had drifted, how much of her own struggle she had hidden behind the facade of strength I had taught her to wear. But now, as I looked at her, I saw the cost. I had been so focused on survival that I hadn't seen her sinking. "I'm sorry," I whispered, the guilt flooding my chest like a wave. "I never meant for you to feel like this. I just wanted to protect you. I didn't want you to feel the same things I've felt." Tasha's face softened, but the tears still glistened in her eyes. "I know, Mom. I know you're trying, but it's too much. I can't be the one who holds everything together anymore. I'm not strong enough." Her words were a mirror to my own fears, my own doubts. She had been trying to hold it all together for me, just like I had been trying to hold everything together for her and Devin. But the truth was, we were both breaking, and I didn't know how to fix it. I reached out and took her hands in mine, squeezing them gently. "Tasha, I'm not perfect. I never have been, and I can't keep pretending that I have everything figured out. But I can promise you this, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to start asking for help, for real this time. I'm going to stop trying to carry this all on my own." She looked at me, her expression softening. "But what about Richard? What about all the things he's doing for us?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of everything we had been through. "I don't know, Tasha. I don't know if I can trust him. I don't know if I can trust anyone right now. But I know we need help. And I'm going to stop pretending that we don't." There was a long pause between us, the kind of pause that felt like a turning point. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, I was ready to let go of the reins, to stop trying to control everything. Maybe it was time to accept the help that had been offered, not just from Richard, but from the people who cared about us. "Are you okay with that?" I asked, my voice fragile. Tasha nodded slowly, her tears finally falling freely. "I just want you to be okay, Mom. I want us to be okay." We sat there in silence for a while, the weight of our conversation hanging in the air. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a shift. A subtle shift, but a shift nonetheless. The walls that had kept us apart, me from Tasha, me from Devin, even me from myself, were starting to crumble. And maybe, just maybe, that was the first step toward finding peace. The next few days were quieter. The tension in the house had eased a little, and Tasha, though still distant, seemed to be a little less burdened. She and Devin had both agreed to let me talk to Richard about the next steps, though there was still a part of me that hesitated. But I had to admit I couldn't do this alone, and neither could they. That evening after dinner, I picked up the phone and dialed Richard's number. He picked up on the second ring. "Marissa," he said, his voice warmer now. "How are you?" "I'm ready to talk," I said, my voice steady but unsure. "I think it's time we figured out what happens next." There was a pause on the other end, and then Richard spoke, his tone a little softer. "I'm glad to hear that, Marissa. I'll help you however I can, but just remember, you don't have to do this alone anymore." As I set the phone down and looked over at my children, I felt a faint sense of relief, mixed with uncertainty. But maybe that was okay. Maybe the hardest part wasn't making the decision. It was admitting I couldn't do it all myself. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't fighting alone. And that was enough for now. The next few weeks passed in a slow, tentative pace. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. I had done what I thought I couldn't do. I had started to ask for help. And surprisingly, it didn't feel as much like failure as I had imagined. It felt like I was finally taking a step back from the constant fight, allowing myself the possibility of something different, something better. Richard had stayed true to his word. He didn't push me, didn't try to control things in the way I feared. Instead, he kept his distance, offering guidance when I needed it, but never forcing anything. It was strange, the way he respected my space, even when everything about our arrangement felt like it was in uncharted territory. He didn't pressure me into decisions regarding Tasha's college prep program or Devin's football training. Instead, he let me and the kids decide what was best, quietly giving us the time we needed to figure it out. Tasha was still distant, but there were moments, brief flashes, when I could see the girl she once was, the girl who laughed without hesitation, who would sit with me for hours talking about her dreams. She wasn't there all the time, but at least I could see glimpses of her. That was enough for now. Devin, on the other hand, seemed lighter, freer, as if the weight of our struggles had been lifted just enough for him to breathe. He had started going to football practice again, something I had never seen him take so seriously before. Richard's offer to help him pursue a scholarship had ignited something in him, something I hadn't seen in years. I watched him more closely these days, proud and worried at the same time. He was growing up, and I wasn't ready for that. There were moments, fleeting moments, when I thought maybe, just maybe, I was finally seeing a way out of the suffocating life I had been living. Maybe this was the chance I had been waiting for, an opportunity to give my kids a future that didn't involve struggling every single day. But just as quickly as that thought appeared, a familiar tension crept in. I had asked for help, yes, but there were still things I didn't understand. And no matter how hard I tried to push them down, the doubts kept resurfacing. Was this really the right choice? Was Richard really offering help with no strings attached? Or was there something deeper, something I hadn't seen yet? It was on one of those evenings, when I was sitting alone at the kitchen table, that the storm I had been trying to avoid finally broke. I had just gotten off the phone with Richard about Tasha's upcoming college visit. I hadn't told her yet, but I knew it was time to start talking about the next steps. She hadn't seemed thrilled about the idea, but I had to try. We couldn't keep living like this, just scraping by. She deserved more. We all deserved more. As I sat there looking at the bills, again, the doorbell rang, cutting through the silence of the house. I glanced at the clock. It was late, nearly 8 p.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, it was Richard again, but this time his face was different. His usual calm was replaced by something more urgent, more serious. "Marissa," he said, his voice tight. "We need to talk." My stomach dropped. I stepped aside to let him in, my heart pounding in my chest. Something in the way he said those words, the look in his eyes, made me nervous. This wasn't just another check-in. I could feel it. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling just slightly. Richard closed the door behind him, then turned to face me. "It's about the program for Tasha. I think you need to know something." I didn't say anything, waiting for him to continue, but I could feel the dread building inside of me. What was he going to tell me? Tasha, he began, his words slow, deliberate. She's been offered a spot in the program. She's one of the top candidates. They're offering her a full scholarship. I blinked, stunned by the words. What? You've already talked to them? Richard nodded, his expression unreadable. Yes, I've spoken to the administrators. They're very interested in her, but there's something else you need to know. I felt a coldness creep into my chest. What else, Richard? There's a catch, he said, his voice heavy. The scholarship comes with a condition. Tasha has to agree to leave here, to stay at the program full-time. It's part of the commitment. They won't take her unless she's all in. I felt my stomach turn. What do you mean leave here? She can't just leave home, Richard. She's my daughter. I know this isn't easy, he said, stepping closer. But this is her future, Marissa. This is what she's been working for. You know how important this is for her, how much potential she has. I took a step back, shaking my head. I never agreed to any of this, Richard. I didn't know about these conditions. You've been making decisions without even consulting me. You've been talking to people behind my back. Richard's expression didn't change. I've been trying to give her the opportunities you couldn't, the ones you wanted to but couldn't afford, the ones she deserves. I was shaking now, fury and confusion bubbling up inside me. She deserves a choice, Richard. Not to be pushed into something she doesn't want, not to be told what her future looks like without having any say in it. His face softened slightly, but the edge in his voice didn't disappear. I'm offering her a chance, and I'm offering it to you too, Marissa, but you can't keep holding her back out of fear. I felt my breath catch in my throat. This isn't about fear. This is about control. This is about you making decisions for us like we're not even in the room. There was a long pause, neither of us speaking. Richard stood there, watching me, his expression unreadable. I could see the tension in his jaw, the way his hands clenched into fists by his sides. He wasn't going to back down, and neither was I. I'm not going to make her choose without her knowing everything, Richard. I said, my voice trembling but firm. I'm her mother. I'm the one who gets to decide what's best for her, not you. Richard stared at me for a moment, his eyes searching mine. Finally, he exhaled slowly and nodded, as if conceding something, though I wasn't sure what. All right, he said quietly. But just remember, Marissa, sometimes the hardest thing to do is let go, and sometimes letting go is the only way to help them grow. I didn't respond. I didn't know what to say. As Richard left, I stood there in the doorway, my mind racing. There was a pit in my stomach, a sinking feeling that this wasn't over, that this wasn't the last time he would try to push me into a decision I wasn't ready to make. I had tried to trust him. I had tried to believe that this was about us, about what was best for our family. But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. And as the door clicked shut behind him, I realized that the real storm was only just beginning. The next few days were filled with an uncomfortable silence, one that stretched out longer than I had anticipated. Richard's words echoed in my mind, a constant reminder of the pressure he had placed on me and on Tasha. The idea that she could leave, that she could be whisked away from me, from her family, for a program she hadn't even fully agreed to, was too much to bear. It wasn't just about the opportunity, it was about the suddenness of it, the fact that it was all happening so fast. Richard's insistence, his confidence that this was the only way forward, made me feel like I had lost control of my own life, of my family. I had tried to talk to Tasha about it, but every time I brought it up, she shut me down. She wasn't ready to talk. She wasn't ready to make a decision, and I couldn't blame her. She had her own fears, her own confusion, and now I was adding to it. I had tried to shield her from this for so long, but now it was all too real, too complicated. That evening, I sat in the dim light of the living room, my hands folded in my lap, staring at the empty space around me. Devin was in his room, lost in his world of football stats and video games, and Tasha was somewhere upstairs, probably with her headphones on, avoiding the conversation we both knew we needed to have. The house was too quiet, and in the quiet, I could feel the weight of everything pressing in. The bills, the choices, the fears for my children's future. I thought back to the moment when I decided to accept Richard's help, the relief I felt in the beginning. The hope that maybe, just maybe, this was our chance to escape the struggle. But now, with every step forward, I felt myself being pulled further from the people I loved. I had accepted help, yes, but at what cost? What had I given up in the process? I couldn't keep pushing these thoughts away. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine when it wasn't. Just then, the doorbell rang again. This time, I didn't even have to check the peephole. I knew who it was before I opened the door. Richard. I hesitated for a moment, then opened it. His face was more serious than I had seen it in a while, his eyes searching mine like he was trying to read me. But I wasn't ready for this conversation, not yet. "Marissa," he said, his voice low and careful. "We need to talk." I didn't say anything, just stepped aside to let him in. The air felt thick with unspoken words, each of us holding something back. I didn't know if I was ready to face what was coming, but it seemed inevitable. The walls I had carefully constructed around myself were starting to crumble, and I couldn't stop it. About what happened last time, he continued, once we were both sitting at the kitchen table. "I don't think you fully understand the stakes here." I crossed my arms, trying to hold onto some semblance of control. "I understand perfectly well, Richard. What I don't understand is why you keep pushing me like this. Why you keep making decisions for my family without including us in them." He sighed, leaning forward, his fingers pressed together. "I'm not making decisions for you, Marissa. I'm giving you options. I'm giving your children options, and I'm offering to help you make them a reality. But you have to trust me." "I trusted you when I accepted your help," I said, my voice rising slightly. "But I didn't expect this. I didn't expect you to take over, to decide what's best for Tasha without even asking her what she wants. She's a teenager, Richard. She's not ready to make life-altering decisions on her own, and I'm not ready to push her into that." "I'm not pushing her," Richard said, his voice softening, but there was still a firmness there that I couldn't ignore. "I'm giving her the tools she needs to succeed. I'm giving her a chance to escape this cycle, to become something more than just this." He gestured to the house around us, the worn furniture, the bills stacked on the counter, the quiet tension that hung between us like a cloud. I felt the sting of his words, the underlying accusation that somehow I wasn't enough, that the life I had built for my family was insufficient. "You think that's all she wants, Richard?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "To escape this life, to leave behind everything she knows and loves because it's hard? You're asking me to choose for her what she's not ready to decide." Richard looked away for a moment like he was considering something. Then he turned back to me, his eyes intense. "You're asking her to choose what she can't see. You're keeping her here in this cycle because you're too afraid to let go." I stood up abruptly, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm not afraid. I just don't want to lose her. Richard, she's my daughter. I don't know what's best for her. I don't know what I'm doing. But I do know one thing. I don't want her to feel like she has to make a choice she's not ready for." Richard stood too, his face hardening. "You're not listening to me, Marissa. You're so focused on what you think is right that you're not even seeing the opportunity in front of you. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about Tasha's future. You can't hold on to her like this forever." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it, as if he believed that I was holding Tasha back, as if I was the problem, as if I wasn't doing everything I could to give her a better life. "I'm doing the best I can," I said, my voice breaking, "but I'm not ready to push her away, not like this." There was a long pause between us. I could feel the tension building, the weight of the unsaid words pressing down on both of us. Richard's expression softened, but his gaze never wavered. "I'm not asking you to push her away," he said quietly. "I'm asking you to let her grow, to let her make her own decisions, even if they are difficult. You can't protect her from everything, Marissa. Sometimes you have to let go." I didn't answer. I didn't know how to respond. All I could do was stare at him, the truth of his words sinking in. For the first time, I saw it. The distance between us. The gulf between what he was offering and what I was willing to accept. It wasn't just about Tasha. It was about me, about everything I had built, about everything I was afraid of losing. "You have to decide, Marissa," Richard said, his voice low but firm. "Either you let go or you hold on to something that might slip through your fingers anyway." I didn't answer him. I couldn't. Richard turned to leave, his footsteps heavy on the floor as he made his way to the door. I stood there in the kitchen, feeling a deep, gnawing emptiness settle in my chest. What was I supposed to do? What was the right choice? The door clicked shut behind him, but the question remained. And for the first time, I realized that the answer wouldn't just come to me. I would have to make it. But I wasn't ready yet, not by a long shot. The days after Richard left were some of the most difficult I'd experienced in a long time. His words lingered in the air like smoke, and I couldn't shake them off no matter how hard I tried. "Either you let go, or you hold on to something that might slip through your fingers anyway." Those words kept echoing in my mind, repeating in my thoughts like a mantra I couldn't escape. I had been trying to hold on to something for so long. I had tried to protect my kids, to shield them from the pain and the struggle that had defined most of my life. But now, it felt like I was standing at the edge of something, unsure whether to take a step forward or retreat back to what was safe, even if that safety was suffocating. I spent the next few days avoiding Richard's calls. I didn't know how to talk to him, not after everything that had happened. I wasn't ready to admit to him, or even to myself, that I was starting to feel the weight of the choices I had made. I wasn't ready to acknowledge that I might be holding my family back, that my fear of losing control was making it harder for all of us to move forward. Tasha wasn't speaking to me much either. She was in her room more than usual, her door often shut, and when she did speak to me, her words felt colder, more distant. I knew she was angry. I didn't blame her. I had promised her I would always protect her, but now I was realizing that sometimes protection meant letting go, not holding on tighter. Devin, for his part, was still focused on football. He spent most of his time either practicing or buried in his homework, trying to avoid whatever tension had settled in the house. I watched him, proud of how determined he was to make something of himself, but also worried. I was afraid he was too focused on escaping the chaos of our lives, afraid that he was using football as a way to outrun the truth. I couldn't help but feel that I had somehow failed both of them. Tasha was too angry to trust me right now, and Devin was too quiet, too caught up in his own world to see the cracks forming between us. It was late on a Saturday afternoon when I finally decided to face the truth, whatever it was. I had called Richard back earlier that day, and he agreed to meet with me at the diner where we'd first talked about everything. He said he wouldn't pressure me anymore, that he just wanted to have an honest conversation. I arrived early, sitting in a corner booth, my hands wrapped tightly around a cup of coffee. The diner was quiet, the low hum of conversation around me barely reaching my ears. The familiar scent of grilled food and fresh-brewed coffee filled the air, but nothing felt familiar. Nothing felt comforting anymore. When Richard arrived, he looked just like he always did, calm, composed, as if he hadn't been through the same emotional ringer that I had. He sat down across from me without a word, studying my face as if trying to gauge what I was thinking. I looked at him for a moment, my heart racing, unsure of where to begin. "I've been thinking a lot about everything you said," I started, my voice shaky. "And I don't know what to do with it. Richard nodded, his expression softening slightly. I understand. This is a lot to process, but I'm not here to pressure you. I just want to be sure you're making decisions for the right reasons. I could feel the walls inside me starting to crack. I'm scared, Richard, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm scared that if I let go, I'll lose everything. That if I let Tasha go, if I let her choose her own path, I'll lose her. And I can't. You won't lose her, Richard interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. Letting go isn't about losing someone. It's about giving them the space they need to grow. Tasha has her own path to walk, Marissa. You can't walk it for her. I shook my head, tears welling up in my eyes. But what if she's not ready? What if she's making the wrong choice? What if she needs me more than I realize? Richard reached across the table, placing a hand over mine, his touch warm and reassuring. You're not abandoning her, Marissa. You're giving her the tools to stand on her own. And I think deep down you know that. You're scared of the unknown, of letting go of the safety you've created. But you have to trust that Tasha is capable of making her own decisions, and she needs you to trust her. I pulled my hand back, unable to look him in the eye. I've always tried to protect her, to keep her safe. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can let her go. Richard's gaze softened and he leaned back in his chair. I'm not asking you to let go completely, Marissa. I'm asking you to let her have the chance to grow. You've done everything you can. It's time to let her take the next step. And in doing so, maybe you'll find the strength to take your own next step. His words hit me like a wave, crashing over me with a force I hadn't expected. I had been so focused on holding onto Tasha, so focused on what I thought was best for her, that I hadn't even considered what it meant for me to let her go. And the idea that I could hold on to her so tightly that I could risk suffocating her, that terrified me. I'm scared, Richard, I whispered, the tears finally falling. I'm scared that if I let go, I'll lose her for good, that she'll grow up and leave me behind, and I won't be able to protect her anymore. Richard didn't answer right away. He just sat there, watching me, letting me feel the weight of my fears. Finally, he spoke softly, but with conviction. You don't have to protect her from everything, Marissa. You don't have to protect her from life. What you can do is love her, and that's enough. For the first time in a long time, I felt the burden lift just a little. Richard wasn't asking me to be perfect. He was asking me to trust my daughter, to trust that she could handle the challenges ahead. And in doing so, maybe I could start trusting myself too. I wiped my eyes, taking a deep breath. I don't know if I'm ready, Richard, but I think I need to be. He smiled, a small, knowing smile. Then let's take it one step at a time. Later that night, as I sat on the couch with Tasha, I could feel the tension between us starting to ease. I had no grand plan, no perfect speech to make everything right, but I knew this. I had to let go. I had to let Tasha make her own choices, even if it scared me. I had to trust her, even when I didn't fully trust myself. I talked to Richard today, I said, my voice tentative but steady. He wants you to have every opportunity, and I think it's time we start talking about your future. Tasha didn't say anything at first. She just looked at me, her eyes still filled with a mixture of confusion and hesitation. What do you mean? I mean that you have the chance to do something great, I said, my voice stronger now. But you get to decide how you want to do it. I'm not going to push you into anything, Tasha, but I want you to know that whatever you choose, I'm behind you. She didn't say much after that. She just nodded, and for the first time in a while, I saw something in her eyes, something that had been missing for too long. It wasn't a solution. It wasn't an easy fix, but it was a start. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like maybe we were on the path to healing. Together. The days following that conversation with Tasha felt like a quiet breath after a storm. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was real. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were both standing on solid ground, even if we weren't sure of the exact path ahead. Tasha and I had finally begun talking again, really talking. She wasn't as distant as before, but she still needed time. We both did. I had to let go of the idea that I could control everything. I had to let her make her own choices, even when those choices terrified me. One afternoon, as we sat at the kitchen table together, Tasha told me she was ready to visit the college prep program that Richard had talked about. It wasn't an easy decision for her, and I could see the doubt in her eyes, but I could also see the flicker of something else, a willingness to step out of her comfort zone, to see what else was out there for her, beyond the small world we had created. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted, her voice quiet but determined. "But I think it's time to find out." I smiled at her, my heart swelling with pride and fear all at once. "I'll be there with you every step of the way. But this is your decision, Tasha. I'll support you no matter what." It wasn't much, but it was enough. Enough for her to take that first step. Enough for me to see that she was growing, changing, becoming her own person. And for the first time, I wasn't afraid of it. I was proud of it. Devin had started to show more interest in football again, now that he had a clearer path ahead. Richard's offer to help him with a scholarship had given him something to focus on, something to strive for. He was still the quiet kid who preferred his solitude, but there was a spark in him now that hadn't been there before. I watched him with a quiet sense of hope, knowing that whatever happened, he had the potential to go further than I ever had. And as for me, I had stopped pretending that I had all the answers. I was still figuring things out, still learning how to trust, how to let go, how to accept help without feeling weak. But I was doing it, one day at a time. I had never realized how exhausting it was to carry everything on my own. But now that I had started to let go, I felt a strange sense of freedom. The burden wasn't gone, it would never be gone, but it wasn't crushing me anymore. I could breathe, I could live. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, more decisions to make, more obstacles to face. But I also knew that we didn't have to face them alone anymore. Richard had offered his help, yes, but it wasn't just about the money or the opportunities. It was about showing us that we didn't have to carry everything on our own. It was about teaching us that it was okay to ask for help, to lean on others when we needed it. And that lesson, I realized, was the most important one of all. As the weeks turned into months, I watched Tasha and Devin take steps toward their futures, steps that felt less like a struggle and more like a chance. A chance to grow, to learn, to become who they were meant to be. And I couldn't help but feel a quiet sense of peace settle in my heart. Maybe this was what I had been working for all along, not just for them to survive, but for them to thrive. To have a future they could be proud of. As I sat in the living room one evening, watching my kids go through their own struggles and triumphs, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the moments we had, for the lessons we had learned, and for the love that still bound us together. I knew that life would continue to throw its curveballs, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face them, with my family, with the strength we had built together. To my dear readers, I want to thank you for joining me on this journey. I know life isn't always easy, and sometimes the road ahead feels uncertain. But I believe in the power of family, of love, and of the strength we find when we allow ourselves to ask for help and to trust others. I hope that this story resonates with you, that it reminds you that no matter how difficult the path may seem, you're never truly alone. There is always room for growth, for change, and for healing. May you and your loved ones find the strength to face the challenges ahead with hope and courage. I wish you health, happiness, and the kind of love that never falters, no matter what life throws your way. Thank you for reading, and may your family always be your greatest support. With love and respect, Marissa.